Alright guys, hi, I'm Shank. I've never done a panel thing before, so we're going to figure out how this works. I run a... So let's start off with who I am. Some people know what I do and some people don't. So... Oh, hold on. Let me get this set out. Let's see. Get that done I think there we go. Alright. And there we go. Alright, so who am I? So on the forums I go by Shank, and what I do is I'm involved in the portablizing scene. I spent 3 years reverse engineering the Wii circuit board, so I documented all the different revisions of it, as well as figured out the differences between them all, and I documented this all online, so everyone could access it and for use in portablizing. I also coordinated a team and helped get the board sanded down, so we sanded down the board to its individual layers, and I spent a few hundred hours manually tracing over every single line on the Wii circuit board so we can make a complete map of it to understand where all the traces run, like all the paths, not just a schematic, but actually see the paths and stuff they do. So the structure I'm going to do for this is if you guys have any questions or stuff, feel free to hit me with it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this kind of presentation thing, just show what I have, and then we'll do kind of freeform from there. So I coordinated and started portablizing. Not portablizing itself, but the movement of the Wii. And I've made several Wii portables, and I showcase a lot of them on my YouTube channel. But that's what I'm known for on the forums, but people outside the forums mostly know me for the GameCube Joy-Cons. That was a little project I did here that went... They're little Joy-Cons, if you've seen them before. They just kind of slide on the Switch and are fully functional. And I made a video showcasing these and how they work and all that kind of stuff. How I made them, how they work, and the video did really well. And that's where a lot of people seen. Yeah, most people know me for the Joy-Cons, but not the Wii. The Wii stuff is more when I'm interested. This is kind of like a side project for me. But what I do, the Wii stuff I think is a lot more interesting. And whereas the Joy-Cons, it's easier to look at it and say, I know exactly what that is. But if you look at these two things here, both of which are Wii portables, it's a lot harder to explain the concept of that. And that's what I'm going to be doing today. So, oh, come on. Bear with me. There we go. So what is portablizing? So portablizing is where we take up real consoles and we cut them down to their bare minimum components, and we add a whole bunch of parts like screens, and we replace parts like the disk drives because they suck, and we use, again, real hardware, not emulators. So we take the consoles, cut them down to their bare guts, and rebuild them into new stuff. Yeah, it was a mint box, so I'll get to that in a minute. So these are the three most popular portables people make are Wii's, N64s, and PS2s. So these use real consoles inside. Yeah, this Altoids, this was another video of mine. This Altoids thing, this is an actual Wii inside of here. Like, not an emulator. Like, this is a fully functional Wii portable console. But, anywho, so, the concept's pretty simple. So what we do is we replace all of the parts. So we take the screens and the power supply screen, replace it with just a Chinese LCD. IPS ones are starting to hit the market, so that's really exciting. Then we'll take the audio, like the TV speakers, and we replace them with little what are they called? We'll replace those with like our own little custom audio amps. So the community has been building lots of custom projects. So we like a audio amp that has headphone support, so you can still use a headphone jack. And we'll replace the GameCube controller. While you could cut up and use an original GameCube controller inside, a member of our community named Aurelio developed a little microcontroller. So kind of like a really simple Arduino type thing, where it's the whole circuit board is about the size of a quarter, and it functions as a GameCube controller. But it also lets you remap buttons, and it lets you use like 3DS sliders or Switch sticks instead of just GameCube sticks. So you can use any joystick you want when building a portable. So we take the things that you would normally plug into a console that are really big, and we replace them with smaller versions. So why doesn't Nintendo do it? Do you think you could do? Do you think there's something you could make to have 3DS games work on the console output HDMI? There's actually Woozles, the guy who did the GBA consoleizer, is actually working on that right now. He's been, from what I've seen on Twitter, he's been posting about it. So why doesn't Nintendo do? Why doesn't Nintendo do this? And the simple answer is because money. So making a portable console like this, it requires a lot. Home consoles use a lot more power than, say, a DS or 3DS does. Just like the Switch needs a whole cooling system, the batteries and higher powered components and all this stuff combined with the larger screens, all this cost adds up, and it's not something that they really want to do. And they'd rather than pursuing old hardware, they would rather pursue new hardware. Nintendo does what they want, and we tend to like it. Most of the time we like it. So why the Wii specifically? Why do I have this like fascination with this console? Well, start off, I really like GameCube games, especially Melee. So the Wii, from a hardware perspective, is just a more powerful GameCube. Whereas other consoles, they tend to make, they made more revolutionary changes. Like they built new consoles and they added the hardware for backwards compatibility and stuff like that. For this, saying you do what Nintendo don't, yeah. Yeah, I've heard that a few times. But this, what the Wii does is they took the GameCube and they just tacked a few extra features onto it and made it better. So the next generation of like processors are fully backwards compatible with the last ones. They use just a newer version of the GameCube's chipset. So that gives it complete GameCube backwards compatibility. They also added a few extra features. They added a security chip on the Wii. And what that security chip was designed to do was to prevent piracy. But once the hackers got hold of it, it became their loyal servant. So it allowed you to run custom operating systems. It allowed a lot more control of the system than you could with a GameCube. Whereas on a GameCube, you need a mod chip and stuff like that. On the Wii, you can simply use software, and that software will allow you to load games through the USB hardware, which is already there. So in addition to the complete GameCube library, you have access to the whole Wii library. So, some people like it, some people don't, but a lot of them, like Brawl and Mario Kart, use GameCube controllers, and you can use those. And for some you can't, the community has built tools like GC2Wii Remote, which is software that allows you to use your GameCube controller as an emulated Wii Remote on a real console. So you can use for example, the C stick, and you can remap it. So you can use the C stick to aim in Super Mario Galaxy, and you can press B to shake the Wii Remote in Super Mario Galaxy. Stuff like that. So that's really exciting. And you also have Virtual Console. Yeah, Nintendo has a console, but it doesn't have Virtual Console right now. And it also has access to the full homebrew and emulators, which are an incredible suite of emulators, and a lot of them run even better than Raspberry Pis. So if you're running, say, N64 games, or other things that require a little more power than the Raspberry Pi has under the hood, because these were built more as gaming consoles rather than the Wii was a gaming console rather than an Internet of Things device. So Here's something a lot of people don't know about the Wii. Wii has some Wiis have a little secret on the inside. So we all know that the hardware revisions, like the Xbox 360 to the Xbox 360S, the PS3 versus the PS3 Slim. They took the transistors and the whole chip itself, and they took the entire thing and they made it smaller. And by taking the same chip, and putting it in a smaller area, that chip is much cheaper and it uses a lot less power and generates a lot less heat. So with that, they can use lower powered regulators on the board, which is cheaper. They can use smaller heatsink, which is cheaper. The chip is cheaper, so they can ship out these newer, more efficient, smaller consoles that cost them less to produce. On the Wii, on the other hand, they had already made it pretty small. The heatsink itself was already pretty small, whereas the Xbox and the PlayStation 3 were melting themselves. The Wii was such a low-powered console. It was so much weaker than the others, but it barely sipped up any power to begin with. Whenever they actually did the same thing. They took the chip and they made it way smaller. But after they shrunk the chip, they kept the hardware the same, and they didn't make any changes on the outside. So the consumers didn't really notice a difference. You might notice so once you trim it down to its bare bones, the core of the Wii uses 40% less power. So that's a big deal for us. That's why us portablizers, I've figured out when they made the change, and I've got a whole guide on the internet on how to document which one. For a home console, doesn't really make a difference, but for a portable, it does make a big difference for power and power consumption and battery life. So that's something that a lot of people, and this is completely unrelated to the Wii Mini or the ones without the ports, GameCube ports. This was a little secret on the inside. So how do we make it all fit? So if you look here, this is a Wii. So this is a Wii here, and this is a Wii, and if you look, this is a fully functioning Wii, but it is quite a bit smaller than this thing. So I'm going to dive more into detail on that in a minute. But what we're doing is we're replacing the big parts, like the SD card, like the big disk drive here, and we'll take that entire thing and we'll replace it with a little USB drive. This is a little USB to micro SD reader. So that takes up way less space, way less power. You get all your games in one place, and you get much faster load times. And you don't have to deal with carrying your disks and scratch disks and all that stuff. So there's that. We'll take the voltage regulators on the board, and we'll remove those and replace them with our own custom ones. I've got a picture of some here. And every line on the circuit board, we can actually... so if you look at a circuit board, it's made of a bunch of lines. Each of those lines is like a little wire. So if we follow that wire back to where it starts, and if it goes from point A to point B, what we can do is we can say, okay, let's follow it all the way back here. Let's cut the circuit board here and solder closer to the point. So that way we can trim the whole thing. I always tell people portablizing is the art of shortening wires and moving wires. So, teardown time. So this here. So I'm gonna close this off for a second. So here we have a Wii. This is a Wii, and this is what it looks like on the inside. So if you look here, this is the majority of the bulk itself is this disk drive and this heatsink. So this chunk of it over here is the disk drive, and then this chunk of it is the heatsink. Once you remove that, you're left with a main board. And so it's a lot flatter, a lot thinner, and most of the bulk is already gone. So since they could have fit all this in a much smaller area, but since they had to have ports up here, ports over here, and buttons on the front, it was just a lot cheaper to make it all one board and just kind of spread everything out, rather than to take it all and rather than to have it a bunch of smaller boards that were connected by cables. This was actually much cheaper. So let's go to here. So we're going to talk a little bit we're going to get a little nerdy for a minute. We're going to talk about the Wii's anatomy. This looks really complicated, but it really isn't. There's only a few parts that are necessary. If you've ever built a computer before, you know that you have your CPU, that's your main processor. You have your GPU, that's your GPU is your graphics processor. And this has a few extras in it, like the North Bridge and a lot of your chipsets that are on the motherboard, and RAM. So you have 1, 2, 3, those are your core things, and those are the needed stuff. And this other stuff, the Wi-Fi module over here, we can patch that out with software. We don't need it. Nintendo shut down the servers a long time ago. Bluetooth, that's what's used to connect Wii remotes. You can rewire that up with 2 wires, or you can just omit it and use the software patch to use a GameCube controller for all that stuff instead. Disk drive connectors, we don't need those. MX chip, this is used for real-time clock. So if you want the clock, you can rewire this up, and it's just like 4 wires back to the Wii. You can cut this little chunk out, but it's not needed. And so that's the front. So you need just those 3 things there in the front. And if you look at the back here, we have the NAND. That's your solid-state storage. That's where everything's stored. And then you have your audio-video encoder. That's where it takes the digital video from the Wii's GPU and it converts it to analog video. And that's all you need. You need those 5 things, and you have a booting, functioning Wii. You know, assuming you have power supply to it. Hold on just a second. My tab just crashed for the events thing, so I lost chat. Just a second. I'm not seeing. Hold on. Is it just? I'm not seeing chat in my thing. It's like bringing up the. Okay, there it is. Sorry, just technical difficulties on my end. All right. So back to there we go. So back to this. So with this, you only need those 5 things, and what we can do is take that and make a cut. Take that board and cut it down to just the bare minimum right there. So that right there is a board that has everything you need, aside from power regulation. That's what's left. And this is the key idea behind what we do. So from there, you add a few more wires. So this is a test someone did where they wired up. So you've got a button. So this person added Bluetooth to it. So they added a button for Bluetooth sync. They added a reset button for debugging. They added a GameCube controller port. They added a USB, and they added an audio-video port. And yeah, I can see that message, Joe. And this is, once you wire up 4 more wires for power, this console that board in the picture will boot and be a fully functioning Wii that uses about 5 watts of power. So, and this is what it looks like fully operational. So just a few more wires and you have a fully functioning Wii. And so as complicated as it may seem on the surface, you're really just taking stuff that's already there and repackaging it in a smaller package and replacing off-the-shelf internal stuff with either custom or off-the-shelf parts that are modern and smaller. So that's really that sums up the kind of slideshow about it. Let me close that out. So if you guys have any questions or stuff about the hobby, I'm more than happy to talk about it. It's really cool, all the cool stuff the community's been able to do. So this, in the meantime, so this is actually, let's tear down this one right here. So this is a Wii portable I made. This one's one of my favorites. I remade a old GameCube portable someone else made using all the modern tech we've had in the scene since. So if you open it up, it does look a little scary at first, but here we have, so here's the Wii's main motherboard there. We have a power management board down there. We have, so that's the voltage regulators. That takes the power from the batteries and it supplies different parts of the board need different voltages. Like this chip needs 3 volts, this chip needs 1 volt, and that just keeps the lithium batteries from, doing lithium battery explodey things, and it runs. How do you feel about the little emulation handhelds that seem to come out constantly? You've seen one, you've seen them all. They're very cool. I think they're good for. They have their place. The hardware's not bad. The software tends to be lacking. Like I've got a GPD XD, and I really like it. I got all 120 stars in Super Mario 64 on it. A lot of them over advertise and under deliver. Can we get a brief demo or peek at the innards of the Altoids Wii? Yeah, I'll crack that open for you in just a second. First, I'm going to answer Ron's question. So, they email me all the time asking me for reviews, and I'm like, that's not what my channel is. But they're cool, and I think they're coming a long way. A lot of the YouTube channels will overpromise what they can actually do, because it's still relying on that. They're great for NES, they're great for Super NES, they're great for Game Boy. They're good for Game Boy Advance, can be hit or miss. It tends to work most of the time. N64 isn't that good, but we're a long ways away from Wii stuff being close to perfect, like NES and Super NES emulation are. And a lot of people have. I really want it to be as close to perfect as possible. I like performance. I want enough overhead where I'm not suffering frame drops and stutters and graphical glitches that you get from real hardware, that you don't have on real hardware that you have on emulation. So I prefer using real hardware in these handhelds. But I do have a little GPD XD. Hope that answers your question, Ron. Brief demo of the Altoids Wii. Yeah, I can do that. So I can kind of show both. They both have kind of the same principles. The Altoids one, I totally cheated, and I cheated in a lot of ways, and I used tack switches instead of actual buttons, so it's super uncomfortable. I use a tiny screen. Have you done an N64 portable? Sorry if you mentioned it. Had to step away for a minute. I actually have not done an N64 portable. I've been mostly working on I want to do one eventually, but I've mostly been working on R&D for a lot of newer stuff, and the YouTube channel is really taken over. So I've got a few Wii portables I want to do first. I've got a few more projects for the channel, and then I'll circle back and do N64 and stuff. But there's new advancements made every day, and the scene keeps doing all sorts of crazy stuff. The guy who did Ultra HDMI did a thing called Ultra VGA, where he did a circuit board where it does VGA, all the features of Ultra HDMI, but in VGA form, so we can run it on our portables. Just crazy stuff. I've waited for years, can't figure out what shell to use. Yeah, check out. The thing is, you can design your own shell. You make it's whatever you want it to be. That's kind of the beauty of portables, is that you can make this ugly, just super ugly tin right here, or you can make a more sleek, kind of good screen to body ratio, modern looking thing like this. So between these two, it's kind of the same thing. I had to do some crazy rewiring there for if you look, then once you start to get into the really ambitious tiny trims, then let me see if I can come on, little guy, let's focus here. Maybe this one will focus. Maybe no. Come on, fancy camera, do your no. Okay, that's as good as we're gonna get. You can see a bunch of really tiny wiring points there that all have to be wired to the same thing. Once you get smaller than this, the difficulty curve just goes way up, and we don't recommend people do that unless you really understand the circuit board, unless you've stared at it for hundreds of hours like I have. But in here, there's so it's a little custom power management circuit board there. I've got a This one's a custom controller board right there, and it goes around. These are two 3DS sliders. This is a screen, a little 2-inch screen that accepts composite video, and a little drive board there. Yeah, composite sucks, but it's so small. The screen's so small it doesn't really matter. And then back behind here, I've got a little battery. I've got a little lithium board there, and then I've got a copper plate and a power jack at the top, and it's got a little fan and cool in there, so it doesn't do a great job, but the battery only lasts 10 minutes, so you don't need to worry about keeping it particularly cool if it runs out of battery before it has time to heat up. So over here, so to one where it's a little more spaced out so you can kind of see what's going on. So we've got the main board itself, and then the cooling is like behind it here. So I've got this cooling set up, and this is the flash drive ports. Does it smell minty though? When I did this project, because I went through so many Altoids tins, my room didn't just smell like mint, it burned. The lab burned your nostrils of mints for months. Well, it burned for like a month or two, and then after that you could still smell it. And the lab doesn't smell mint anymore. And like, I get PTSD when I smell Altoids. So we got batteries here. Over on this side of the circuit board, this is where I mounted the control things. Right here, this is the little GC Plus board I was talking about that emulates the GameCube controller. So it just functions as a GameCube controller. It's like using a third-party thing instead. Gotta reload the uplink thing. Give me just a minute. There we go. What kind of soldering equipment do you use for those tiny connectors? Do you ever burn up chips while soldering to them? So I use a Hakko 951 right here. It's a little overkill for it. I recommend the Hakko 888D. It's like $100, but I'm soldering so much that I like investing in good, long-lasting equipment. So yeah, I use a microscope because it's like using cheat codes. It just makes it so much easier. But I don't really, when you get better at the technique, you don't tend to burn up chips as much. That comes with practice. And it more comes down to just being slow and methodical and controlling. Using flux helps soldering so much. As for this, so this board right here is the. So keep the questions coming. I'm gonna kind of go over the internals of this as you guys ask between questions, because there's kind of a latency. So this is the circuit board that takes the VGA. So it's RGB with separate H-sync and V-sync. So it's a really good signal. And it runs that and it converts it into the digital signals for the screen that it uses right there. This is the audio amp that the BitBuilt store sells. Headphone jack. Here's buttons for the screen controls. There's a little speaker right there. Another speaker there. This is a Wavebird's circuit board, so I can actually connect Wavebird controllers to have that be a player too. So if me and a buddy want to play Smash, you can just take a Wavebird and connect it, and just grab a Wavebird and connect it, and you're good to go. And then this is the Wii's Bluetooth module, so I can connect third-party GameCube controllers. Not third-party GameCube controllers, external Wii remotes. So, I can use Wii remotes for games, but, I mean, it's mostly for GameCube games and stuff that uses a GameCube controller. But, let's see what else here. So, we got more time. Any more questions and stuff? Let's see, who else here? We got Swim in here. Let's see if there's any other familiar faces in the chat. Hold on. How do I make this come back? There we go. So, let's see what else. Any sort of projects you finish that you totally regret bothering to do, definitely kill me. Like, this one took me about a year, and it burned me out, and I stopped for several months from the whole hobby because I just didn't want to touch a soldering iron for the longest time. That took way too long. GameCube Joy-Cons, I definitely don't regret doing it, but it was way more work than I thought it was. It was a lot of work because there was lots of just small problems and just like perfectionism that went into it. That's it. The Pee-wee Pocket was like the first one, and it took like 3 years because the scene kept moving fast. Because at first I didn't think I was gonna. I didn't know how much. I knew the Wii had a lot of potential, but I didn't know it was going to be able to be trimmed that small. How long did the GameCube Joy-Cons take? Let's see. I started in like after I finished this one, like right after, and I posted that video in like March, and then I finished them in like October, no, like August of that year. Yeah, I finished them in like August, and then I spent a few months editing the video. Like I spent so much time editing the video because I knew it was gonna blow up because it's just like one of those things that's like you look at it, you know exactly what it is, and I knew it would blow. I didn't know it was gonna blow up that much. I expected like 1 million, not like the absurd amount it's gotten. You talked about the software needed to make these handhelds. Do you also hack the console and install custom software? Yes, that is step one. So there's a whole suite of software called BB Loader, and it's way easier than using. There's a whole software team. I'm a hardware guy, so I don't know too much about the software side of things. I'm not involved in that development. There's people way smarter than me taking care of that. So, on the software side, you install the software to the board before you even trim it. That's like step one. And there's a whole, like you install Letterbomb, which is super easy. You follow that process, and then once you go to Homebrew Channel, it's like a one-click installer, and you just follow the steps, and it just does everything, sets it all up, and then it boots straight. And then once you do that, it boots straight into a custom user interface that they designed, where you pick your console, you pick your game, you go. So it's a really elegant solution they've got set up. And I think once the people outside of the portablizing scene, because it's going to be really popular for home consoles once people outside the portablizing scene do it. Because most people have moved on from Wii stuff except the portablizers. Think a raw concept of why, but isn't the Wii Mini used for these portable mods? Yes, I was going to touch on that because I have a Wii Mini right here. I grabbed one of these just to show you guys. So the Wii Mini, I get asked this a lot. So the Wii Mini is, I describe it to people as the Wii without all the good parts of the Wii. The Wii Mini is what everyone thinks the Wii is. Composite only, so composite video only, doesn't play GameCube games at all, so it's just Wii games, and no online, and up until recently, no homebrew. People recently hacked the Wii Mini, but it's a pain in the butt to do that whole process. It's not as easy as the Wii is. But if you look here, the layout, so you have the RAM, you have the GPU, and you have the CPU. So those three are there together. And when you flip it over, here, let me go there so there's less glare. So this cluster of traces is the same. This audio video encoder is there. This one's a little higher. And then this, the RAM is in the same place. So the trim we do is even smaller than you could trim the Wii Mini. So the Wii Mini is harder to hack, less versatile, more expensive, and you can't really, after you trim it, it's smaller than the Wii Mini even can be, because this video encoder is up there. So there's really, it's just the worst of everything. And it's the Wii Mini looked really promising, but once you take it apart, it's just a regular Wii where they're like, hey, if we did a top loading drive, we could consolidate stuff a little bit. And so another fun thing a lot of people don't know, I find this interesting. I don't know how interesting you guys will find it. So there's those Wiis that have the GameCube, that don't have the GameCube controller ports. Can the NES be portableized? Sure, absolutely. The NES can totally be portableized. So those consoles don't tend to be very popular. So the consoles that aren't popular for portableizing tend to fall into one of two categories. The first one is like the first one is consoles like the Xbox 360, where you can't really emulate it on a handheld device, but it's also gigantic and sucks. Even the slim ones suck like 90 watts of power compared to the Wii's like 5, and the board is like this big and it's just dense with components everywhere. So whereas the NES, on the other hand, the NES, the reason why is because emulation, because it's such a relatively simple console, emulation on it is really good, and it's good enough for most people that in a handheld, pretty much everything can run NES emulation next to perfectly. Again, I know emulation isn't perfect. That's a whole nother like debate and stuff, but that. So, you mentioned that you want to make an N64 portable in the future. Do you have any holy grail modding projects that you want to do in the future? I have more projects I want to do than I have time or capability right now. Like I would love to do, if you guys know about Mister, the FPGA multi-system, I'd love to do a portable of that. I'd love to do a PS2 portable. Right now I'm working on a Virtual Boy handheld. That's going to be my next video. Do I have the kind of layout there? Yeah, I'm working on a Virtual Boy handheld. So that's going to be, let's see, here's kind of the general case. It's going to be red and black, but I'm doing test prints in this color. I'm doing test prints in just some of the leftover blue filament I have. But it's going to be about this big. And it's got a 4.3-inch IPS screen. Going to have HDMI out, link cable port, controller port, USB-C charging, headphone jack, card slot. Yeah, it's a work in progress. I'm pretty close to finishing it. So I'm about 80 to 90% done. Yeah, and it's gonna have like it's gonna be multi-material printing. So it's gonna be multi-material printing. So it's gonna be, how do I describe it? Like very Virtual Boy themed. I'll be posting that video once I finish it. I barely upload videos because I'm always working on a project and the projects take so dang long. It's not, yeah, I'm always in the lab working on stuff. And I've got lots of projects, they just all take time. I want to do, this one here is the Pee Wee Pocket. It was my like first completed portable, and I like it because it's really compact. It's like, it looks boxy, but it's super comfortable. And the power switch got bonked while it was in a pouch, and it ran for 4 hours with the ventilation completely closed. and now it's a melty boy. So I'm going to make a second one that's way better and incorporates a lot of the things I've learned since I designed that years ago. But the Wii's without the GameCube ports are exactly the same. So it even has the pads to solder the GameCube ports. They just didn't solder them there to save cost. So they use a disk drive that doesn't accept mini DVDs, and that was cheaper. And then they removed the ports, and that was cheaper. So the circuit board is exactly the same. The firmware is exactly the same. So if you put a disk drive that accepts GameCube discs on one of these, it'll work. And if you solder ports onto this, it'll work. So that's another little secret. So the ones without the GameCube ports are actually, they're the ones we look for when we're making portables. You make all these mods. Do you ever feel time to actually use them? No. That's the funny thing. Like, as soon as I finish one of these projects, I'm like, yeah, the time I'm spending working on this project, I could be making something else cooler. Like, I'm like, oh, these shoulder buttons, like, revision 2, I could make them better. So I spent so much time modding and working on the videos that, like, as soon as I finish one, like, I did a whole run-through of Twilight Princess on this one, and I did a full run-through of Metroid Prime, Twilight Princess and Metroid Prime 2 on this one, and I did Metroid Prime 1 and some other stuff on the Melty Boy before it melted. Rest in peace. And I played, like, a few 15-minute sessions on this, but I want to play it, like, as little as possible, because I don't want it to, like, die. Because then I have to fix it, and this thing's hell to work on. So yeah, I've written the board differences are all, I've documented it all and what's different about it. So this is like the three different ones. There's the standard console. There's the ones without the GameCube ports, which are the same, but they just don't have the ports soldered. And then there's the Wii Mini one, which is almost the same, but just rearranged a little bit. So kind of worthless for making portables. You guys got any more questions? I got another 17 minutes to kill. Still working on the whole, like, planning a panel thing. This is my first time doing it. Are you aware that people play video games on TVs? Yeah, but my freedom? So, like, I personally prefer, I prefer playing games. I prefer, like, playing them on the go, because, like, if I want to sit in a room and play it there, or sit in another room, or take it with me, I really prefer, like, portability. Like, my favorite game console ever is the Game Boy Micro, and I have a small drawer full of them, because it's just so tiny and portable. And for me, that's how I play video games, just on the go. You're doing great. It's been great. What are your top GameCube games? Say top 10 GameCube games. 1 through 5 are definitely Melee. It was actually the first video game I ever bought, and yeah, that game is like, it's like a hard drug. Like, once you get into it, it's so good. Also, I really like the Metroid Prime games. Big Metroid nerd. Kirby Air Ride's underrated. Actually runs on Melee's game engine, which a lot of people don't know. And also, I'd say Twilight Princess. I haven't really played Wind Waker that much. Twilight Princess was more appealing to me, personally. I know that's a controversial opinion. That's a controversial to have that is a controversial opinion to have now, like back in 2000, what was it, 2004 or whatever, that was like the normal, 2005 or whenever Twilight Princess came out, 6, 7, That was the normal opinion. But now everyone likes Wind Waker. Which is cool. You know. Everyone has different preferences of games. I need to play through Wind Waker, though. Once I play through it, I'll probably be like, yeah, okay, everyone's right. Has the Switch captured what you wanted to do out of a powerful handheld? No, it hasn't. That's why I've continued to do. I'm excited for the Switch. I think it's a very, very cool. How to mod my Wii. I have a have the what? The Duke Pong game. Yeah. Hit me up after the event. I'll point you in the right direction for modding your Wii. Has the Switch captured what you want out of a powerful handheld? Yes and no. Yeah, I don't think it's replaced the need for Wii console. Wii, like building Wii portables for like retro games. I don't think it's powerful enough to really do that yet. But everyone complains, you know, based off of the performance per watt, I was like, yeah, the Switch is gonna have, before it came out, I'm like, it's gonna have about the power of an Xbox 360, and people were like, wow, that's so old, that's bad, and I'm like, no, that's really good for a handheld, because the CPU on the Xbox 360 when it launched was like something absurd. Like the whole console was like 180 watts, and the Switch itself is like 5 watts, like total, including the screen and everything, and it's more powerful than an Xbox is, 360 is. So by having it's more, by being more powerful than those consoles, we're the exciting thing is seeing all those Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 era games being ported over to those consoles, because you don't how would I describe it? Because portable Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3s aren't doable. So we're getting games like Borderlands and BioShock and like Castle Crashers. All those fun games are coming over. So that's exciting for me. I think the Switch is plenty powerful, because it's not about how powerful your console is, it's how you use the hardware. That's something I've really found. Xbox One X is a good example. Most powerful console on the market. Not that many games for it. I spend a lot more time on my Wii, which is a fraction of the power, than I do on my Xbox One S. Like barely any time on the Xbox One, and so much more on that, because, especially with retro games. Oh my gosh. But a lot of people are like, oh, well, why do you do this when the Switch is out? But it's about the older games, which I imagine a lot of people at this convention understand. It's really hard to even explain the concept of portables to people, because because of emulators and stuff, people just yeah, it's a portable Wii. And they're like, you mean a Wii U? And I'm like, no, the Wii U isn't a portable Wii. But they're like, oh, you mean like a Raspberry Pi emulator? When I was first doing this project, and I was in my university's fabrication laboratory, and I was doing work on the console, I was about 3 years into development on the Wii's hardware, and some freshman engineering student asked me, he was like, hey, what are you doing? What are you working on? And I was like, oh, I'm, I explained to him, oh, reverse engineering Wii, building consoles and all this stuff. And he's like, and he looked at me and he was like, dude, that's so dumb. If you'd done 5 minutes of research, this freshman engineering guy said to me, he's like, if you'd done 5 minutes of research, you would have seen this thing called a Raspberry Pi, which you could use to emulate all those games. And yeah, that's the kind of thing I deal with on a daily basis. Explaining these projects to people. It's just like, but there's so much stuff coming out of the scene. I could talk about this stuff for hours. Without a doubt, you're in all honesty the coolest person in the entire con. All this is very impressive. Your panel was super pro. I enjoyed every minute of it. Oh, well, thank you, John. I haven't been able to see the other ones. I saw they put me up against. I didn't get to see Retro RGB, in their round table, or the what's it called, or Digital Foundry. I love those guys. They're awesome. I'm looking forward to. I'm hoping I can go back and watch the VODs of those guys because they do really cool stuff. But I could literally talk about this stuff for hours. It's so I think it's fascinating. Seriously, learned a lot. Absolutely fantastic. Thanks. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I try to touch on it's a hard balance because the stuff can get really technical and nerdy and it's super interesting, but at the same time, not everyone cares about the technical details, so it's really hard to strike the balance of electronics and electrical engineering stuff with the not too advanced, but not like talking down to people. Agreed. Fantastic and fascinating. Hope to see you do more panels in the future. Yeah, thanks. I hope so. I had a few in-person things I was gonna do, and I was gonna let people try out my portables and the let people hands-on try out my portables and the GameCube Joy-Cons. And then this thing, I had my channel was taken off, and then I had all these conventions I was invited to, and then this thing called the plague hit. so yeah, it'll be exciting. Yeah, like everyone else is saying, we hope you come back and do more panels one day. Yeah, I'd absolutely love to. I'm down to do any. I don't know if you hit up your conventions and tell them I'm in college, so flying's really expensive. So if they're anyone that's willing to actually fly me out, once this whole plague thing is over, I'm totally down to do. And anyone that's doing digital stuff, I'm down as well. I'd have to find other stuff. How many people ask you for commissions for them? I get at least a dozen messages a week. I get lots of messages. I'll say kindly, no, I don't want to do commissions because I'd rather spend time doing new stuff rather than just remaking and selling the old thing. I'd rather make something new, showcase something new on the channel, and document it all so if other people want to do it, they can. But if I did what people were asking, I'd just be making, a whole bunch of these stupid tins for the rest of my miserable life. So I'll do this, and then I'll do, if I did what everyone, or I'd be making more GameCube Joy-Cons instead of Virtual Boy Portable. So the goal is to just keep making stuff. If you want commissions, there are people that do them. G-Man, careful of the people. They're the good people who actually make good stuff that aren't just firebombs. Cost over $1,000. So if it's less than $1,000, you should be really suspicious. There are people who make, because the materials and the labor it's hundreds of dollars in parts. There's a kit, the G-Boy kit. I made a video on this because I think it's so cool. My friend designed this. This is the G-Boy, if you guys have seen it. So this is a Wii, and it's a kit you can buy with a complete step-by-step guide to make, and it's a almost one-to-one form factor of the Wii, of the Game Boy. It uses Type-C power. It's got a VGA screen, stereo speakers, switch joysticks, dual action shoulder buttons on the back, cooling, internal flash storage for loading games. And they sell these kits in the store, and they're super cool. And I made a video showcasing it just because it's a really easy way. And the kit's about $325, which people think is it is not inexpensive, but that's because all the parts for these kits are super expensive, especially because we're not doing it in small quantities. People don't realize game consoles are razor and blades model. They're sold at either where they make no money or even lose money on a console. The launch PlayStation 3 that was $500, they were losing $260 on every console they sold. And because they make that back with the game sales. But for stuff like this, not only we're not selling games or anything, we're just selling a kit to turn your Wii into a console. Not we, the other members of the community, excuse me. I'm not like involved in the sale of these, but it's so much more. They're not selling games for it. They're just selling that console, and they're not selling millions of them. They're only selling, small batches. Are you trying to incorporate USB-C into all your portables? Now seeing how basically everything except charges with it nowadays. Most things, I want to do USB-C on most things. There's some stuff where I don't for other reasons. I've got another portable where I'm using mini USB 10 pin so that I can charge with mini USB, which is pretty ubiquitous, but I'm using 5 extra pins for some secret bonus features of connecting external stuff to it. So I'll be able to, without having a second port or something that'll fry it if you plug the wrong thing in, I'm using those 5 extra ports. If I use a special cable for the charger, then I can get extra stuff coming out of the portable. So, but for most things, I'm using USB-C because USB-C is a mess. It's, if you don't have your resistors right, it'll you gotta have 2 resistors on there on your circuit board, or else it'll just like fry your device. USB-C is just a standardization nightmare. It's pretty complicated. So I've avoided it for a while, but I'm finally dipping my toes into it and starting to understand it. There's all these specifications, like there's power delivery, and then there's multiple different standards for sending video down it, and it's like multiplexed HDMI or multiplexed DVI or multiplexed DisplayPort, and there's different protocols, so you have to follow this protocol plus USB-C protocol, and it's like it is just quite the mess. Let's see. We got 3 more minutes. Any more questions you guys got? Hit me with it. If you come up with stuff after it, so yeah, my YouTube channel's Shankmods on YouTube. Same thing on Twitter and Instagram. And I'm accessible on Discord, so if you come up with questions after this, you can shoot me messages on any of those things. I reply to pretty much every message that isn't just some like like a kid just saying hi 12 times in a row. I try to be accessible because I know there's other people interested in learning the hobby. There's tons of guides on the BitBuild forums. It's a great resource if you want to learn. On my channel homepage, I've got Electronics 101 playlist of some of the same videos that taught me. Because when I went into this hobby, I didn't even know how to solder, didn't know what ground was on a DC circuit, and now I'm just kind of like, I don't even have a formal education for this. I'm in school for, College of Business. Yeah, I'm in school for business, not even electronics. I've learned it all through this hobby, and that's why I think it's so cool. Thank you very much for your time and sharing your knowledge with us. Yeah, I'm glad you guys were able to enjoy it. It's exciting to see other people interested in nerdy stuff that I enjoy. Thanks to the panel. Glad to hear and finally know. You finally know what ground on a DC circuit is. Yes, indeed.